You're listening to AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota. My name is JP Derbergosian. This is The Gailey Show. We're your answer to what's a queer thing that I can read, watch, or go to this week in the Twin Cities. And today I am very excited. Our guest is Sam Bergman from the Minnesota Orchestra. They have an upcoming Pride concert that will be airing a radio thing that will be live in person at Orchestra Hall on June 20th through the 22nd. So everyone, please welcome my guest today, Sam Bergman. Hello, welcome to The Gailey Show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us about yourself and your role with the orchestra.
Sure. So I play the viola, and I've been with the Minnesota Orchestra for just over 24 years now. I'm one of as many as 98 musicians in the orchestra when we're at full complement. And so just a small part of a really big ensemble, and happy to be with you.
Absolutely. Wow. So tell us first about the upcoming concert.
Right. So we got a new music director this year, chief conductor, Thomas Sundergaard, who is our first, I would say, fully openly queer music director. And one of the first things that he wanted to do as part of his tenure with the orchestra was to do a Pride concert and to make it a part of the orchestra's main subscription series. And so it wound up becoming what's going to be the season finale for us, or the finale of our winter season. And this is a program that Thomas put together originally, I think about a decade ago, with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, where he is also chief conductor. And it was a great success there, and he very much wanted to replicate it in Minneapolis. And so we're all looking forward to it.
And what are some of the pieces that folks can look forward to?
Yeah. So the big epic second half piece is Tchaikovsky's Fourth Symphony, which is, one of the staples of the orchestral repertoire and a piece that we play all the time. And it's so familiar, and Tchaikovsky is so familiar that I think a lot of the audience doesn't think of him as an LGBTQ composer because, of course, he lived so long in the past. But he famously was. He was closeted his entire life, but he was gay, and a really fascinating life story. Tchaikovsky. He was not necessarily the most comfortable with his identity, which it might be to be expected living in 19th century Russia. But his Fourth Symphony is one of the most beloved pieces in the repertoire, but it is also the piece that is the most emblematic of his own conflicted identity. The time at which he wrote it was shortly after he had gotten married to a woman. This was a woman who, by all accounts, was deeply in love with him, did not understand the situation. And he very, you might say disingenuously agreed to go along with this, and then almost immediately realized that it was not going to work. And rather than confront the situation like an adult, frankly, he just sort of fled. He sort of, ran not only away from his marriage, but ran away from Russia, wound up sort of holding up in Europe, writing self-pitying letters to his patron about the hand of fate and how it prevents man from ever being truly happy. And that's actually what the Fourth Symphony is about. It is literally his chronicle of fate hanging over his head like a sword of Damocles, preventing his happiness. Now, what was actually preventing his happiness? Some combination of societal inequity and also his own inability to sort of be honest with himself and others. But what we got out of it was this incredibly bombastic and epic symphony that also has real moments of joy in it, in addition to all the pathos and the drama. So that's going to be the second half of the program. And on the first half, we have works by two composers not as famous as Tchaikovsky, but they certainly deserve to be. Dame Ethel Smythe, who was a huge women's suffrage activist in the UK in the early 20th century. And then a Symphonia Concertante for piano and orchestra by the Polish composer Szymanowski, who is probably lesser known than a lot of other 20th century composers, but is absolutely being celebrated these days, and his music is being played more and more by orchestras all over the world.
Oh, I love that. And there is a guest musician, correct? Pianist?
Yes, yep, and that's for the Szymanowski. It's interesting. It's a piece that we don't call a concerto. It's sort of a concerto, but it's also a concerto for the orchestra at the same time as the soloist. So it's a real collaborative piece.
Once upon a time, I was a violinist in junior high and high school. And I remember I did a book report on Tchaikovsky. And the glare that I got from the conductor and the snickers when I announced to the entire class that, hey, he was gay. Ooh, people did not want to talk about that. But so it doesn't surprise me that a lot of folks don't know that he was gay, but absolutely one of my favorite composers back when I played, which was a really long time ago. But something I noticed when I was doing some research on you, Sam Bergman, is that you have produced, written, and hosted a number of original shows, including LGBTQ ones at the Minnesota Orchestra. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. So I've hosted a lot of different things for the orchestra over the years, a lot of young people's concerts. I still host a series of concerts that the orchestra does at local high schools all around the Twin Cities and sometimes in greater Minnesota. And then for about 13 years, I was incredibly fortunate to host an adult series with conductor Sarah Hicks. It went by several names over the years, Inside the Classics, Sam and Sarah. Basically, it was a series of shows that put a narrative to the music that sort of looked to create kind of a theatrical piece, but with the orchestra center stage the entire time. So we did over 30 original shows on that series, and one of the ones that we were most proud of was a Pride concert 5 years ago, almost exactly 5 years ago, actually. And that was, it was a little different than the program Thomas has put together. We were less focused on, the really big names from the past, like Tchaikovsky, although we did have some Tchaikovsky on that program. But we sort of ran the gamut through a lot of different composers, John Corigliano, there was some Ethel Smythe, Angela Morley, who's an amazing trans composer from the mid 20th century. So that was a night of just real joy, I think, and trying to communicate the sort of the joyous aspects of Pride. I think so much of the time when we get into, a historical examination of great LGBTQ artists from the past, the temptation is always to focus on the fact that they were not free, that they were not able to be open, that, and the various dramas surrounding that in their life. And that's a very legitimate place to focus. But we also really wanted to bring out the joy that is Pride celebrations and the fact that so many composers throughout history have been able to be open with the people around them at the very least. And many of them have been activists, have been trying to make the world actively better for people around them. We talked about Ethel Smythe, who is going to be featured on this concert that we're doing this month that Thomas has put together. And she was, not just an activist for LGBTQ equality, but for women getting the vote in the UK. There was such a push for that. And the suffragettes at the time, they're celebrated now, but they were reviled in large parts of England. And she was one of these activists refusing to knuckle under. She was sent to prison for her activism, and it did not dull her determination at all. In fact, the conductor, Sir Thomas Beecham, who was incredibly prominent in England at the time, was a friend of hers. And when she was jailed along with these other suffragettes, he was deeply concerned that she was not going to, survive this prison experience. And so he went to visit her, feeling that he could, maybe try to intervene with the authorities or something. And he was very concerned. And when he showed up at the jail, he found an impromptu performance going on in the exercise yard. The suffragettes were marching around the yard, belting out Ethel Smythe's March of the Women, which was an anthem of the suffragette movement. And apparently Ethel herself had not been allowed into the yard that day for whatever reason. And so she was conducting the performance with her toothbrush from the bars of her cell.
No way.
So, in fact, she was handling it all just fine.
You've left me speechless. This is an amazing story.
Yeah,
oh my
it's
gosh.
my favorite. It's my favorite.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that is the time that we have today. I have a couple extra questions for you. So we're going to continue this on our YouTube channel and on our everywhere you get your podcast. But for right now, go to Minnesota Orchestra's website, get tickets, do not wait. Sam, thank you for joining us on The Gailey Show.
Absolutely. Thanks.
And then we'll continue on here for folks who are on YouTube and listening. Thank you for sticking along with us. Okay, Sam, how do you have all this history of have you studied like musical history like this, or is this something you just sort of picked up as you went along?
I mean, I'm certainly no historian or musicologist, but these are the stories that you learn when you work in this industry. And one of the things that I've always really enjoyed is putting context to music. I think so often classical music gets held up as this thing that is supposed to be sort of floating above the human world, and I don't love that perspective. I think that music becomes more interesting the more you know about not just the music but the people who created it. So yeah, when I hear great stories about composers and musicians, I tend to remember them because it's what really makes the music meaningful to me.
That's amazing. How did you get into playing the viola?
So like a lot of violists, I started on violin. Viola is kind of a bulky, awkward instrument, and so we don't tend to give it to young children right off the bat because it tends not to fit on their shoulder. So I started off as a violinist when I was 4 years old, which is not uncommon for string instruments. And I studied Suzuki violin. I did that for a few years, and I kept playing. I really liked it. And around age 10 or 11, I started going to this summer camp in Western Massachusetts, a really great little chamber music camp called Greenwood. And when I was 11, I had a counselor at that camp who I really didn't like, and he did not like me. And I think we were both right. And I was annoying him to the point that he told the camp director that he thought I needed more to do with my time so that I would stop annoying him. And at summer camp, music camps, they're always looking for kids who could play viola because there are never enough at that age. And so he suggested to the camp director that they should give me an extra chamber group on viola. And they came to me and asked the only question that you ever ask a kid if you're going to maybe put them on viola, which is, do you read alto clef, which is the clef that violists read in, and pretty much nobody else. And I didn't know what that was. So I said yes. And that went very, very poorly that first week. They did put me in a viola group. I spent the whole week guessing what the notes on the page were, usually guessing wrong. But I kept doing it. I really liked playing the interior lines. And so at that camp, every summer I would come back and I would play a viola group in addition to my violin group. And over time, I just decided that this was actually more my instrument than violin. When the time came to make a choice between them, I was going off to college, to music school, and I just decided, no, viola's where it's at for me. So that was kind of, and the best part about that is that counselor who put that viola in my hand at age 11 is also a member of the Minnesota Orchestra's viola section. So we've been working together now for a quarter century, and we have since forgiven each other. We get along great now.
Oh, I love that story.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I didn't pursue it into college. And so I am curious, what is the field like? Because I went into theater and acting side of things, so I kind of have a sense of what that's like to be an out actor, right, and an out theater professional. But what is it like in the orchestra world? I guess since you come from an acting background, I'll just couch it in those terms. It is way less gay than the theater world, but it is much more gay than a lot of the non-performing arts world, if that makes sense. I would say that the Minnesota Orchestra in particular has been an incredibly supportive place for me for pretty much my whole career. We were one of the first orchestras to offer equal benefits for same-sex employees, healthcare benefits, that kind of thing, back before marriage equality was a thing.
And that was largely due to the efforts of a single violinist named Deborah Serafini, who's now retired, but who her first 20 years in the orchestra, she was the only out musician. If you can imagine 20 years of that, not just being a woman in what was then a male-dominated field, but also to be the only out musician. And she was brave enough to push for those equal benefits. And even though she was told she was being selfish, they said, oh, this is supposed to be, a collective bargaining situation. We're supposed to advocate for everyone. And she said, how long do you think I am going to be the only one? And she was right. Shortly after she won those benefits, other queer musicians appeared in the orchestra, and the rest of us have benefited ever since from her willingness to put herself out there and to get those rights nailed down. And that story was told to me the first week that I was in the orchestra by another queer member. And, I've never forgotten that, and certainly will never forget what Deb did for all of us who came after her.
I did not know that history, and it makes the Minnesota Orchestra all the more special to me now. Thank you for telling us that. And thank you, Sam, for being here on the show. You have so much amazing knowledge. I want you to come back, please. But how can folks connect with you? Can they follow you on social media? Do you have a website?
I am for social media. I'm on Blue Sky. So if anybody else is there, I used to be on Twitter, but things happened. But yeah, on Blue Sky, you can find me at Viola North. So just my instrument and the direction. I'm on there, and you can always find me at Orchestra Hall in downtown Minneapolis about 42 weeks a year.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Sam, so much. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride to you too.
Well, that is our show for today. Thanks everyone for listening and or watching. Our podcasts are executive produced by Jim Pounds. Creative and accounting support provided by Gordy Erickson. Production, distribution, and marketing support provided by Brett Johnson, Chad Larson, Laura Hedlund, and Jennifer Ogren from AM 950. You can find us on social media. Search for This Queer Book Saved My Life on Facebook. We're at This Queer Book on Instagram and at _Gailey Show. Follow us on Instagram for preview clips from upcoming episodes. For The Gailey Show, check out our YouTube channel, unless you're watching us there right now. We're also on AM 950's YouTube channel and Facebook page. As always, you can connect with us through our website, thisqueerbook.com. On our website, you can leave me a voice message of the current LGBTQ books, film, or TV you're loving right now. And if you send me a message, I will play it on the air to share with our community. Go to our homepage, thisqueerbook.com, scroll down, and you will see an orange box with a microphone. Click it and share your message of what queer media you're loving to watch or read. And if you have LGBTQ entertainment news with a Minnesota angle, email gaileyshow@thisqueerbook.com. That's GAILY show@thisqueerbook.com. And until our next episode, see you queers and allies in the bookstores.